we've been incredibly exciting. And I think that this will be very similarly in vein, a conversation that is enriching and that we hopefully walk away more ambitious, more excited, and more curious from. I'm going to begin, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It's really my privilege to be opening this discussion on how we can accelerate progress towards the 2030 agenda. I am really pleased to begin our discussion with country perspectives. I think they are the most critical as we open this. We begin with the Gambia, with His Excellency Ambassador Lemon B. Diba, who is the permanent representative of the mission of the Gambia to the United Nations. Turning the floor to you.
We can use the same.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues. Indeed, it's an honor for me to address this high-level dialogue on South-South and triangular cooperation, which is very, very important. But first, allow me to thank UNOSSC and the Saudi Arabia for bringing us together to discuss this very important, that many people may think is not important, but cooperation, you can all see right now, leaders are addressing the General Assembly and the world to entrench collaboration in our approach. And this can take in different form. The chair has just started with private sector, civil society, coming together, different participants. But what is more important, for us in the LDC, what is more important is to promote lesson sharing and practices in different regions, what works where, is not putting a magic bullet into everything, but we must be context specific as well in our approach. And for the Gambia, we're facing multiple structural constraints, and these partnerships have proven essential, not only addressing long-standing development challenges, but also advancing context-specific solutions that are scalable, affordable, and sustainable. And I think we must underline these three words: scalable, affordable, and sustainable. Despite our vulnerabilities, we have made very significant progress in attaining several targets of the SDG. We have seen significant advancement in health systems, strengthening food security and access to education, especially in rural communities. The real GDP growth of the Gambia in 2023 was about 4.9%. And today we have a provisional figure of 5.3% in 2024. As we know, we're trying to address vulnerable sectors, and women are fundamental in this. Women account for about 84% of the sector, of the small scale sector. And the informal employment compared to 74% of men, highlighting both the significance of informal economy and ongoing gender disparities. To address this unemployment, the Gambia has implemented empowerment initiatives such as youth empowerment, all through South-South cooperation. And the National Enterprise Development Initiative, which also targets young people and women. And the National Social Protection Act, which is very important, creating safety net for vulnerable groups. We have to legislate the National Social Protection as an act to cement their participation in the national economy and to further advance inclusivity, leaving no one behind. To reinforce the commitment, the government established a dedicated social protection fund, which also South-South has participated significantly in providing the seed money. Here, I am here to give testimony of the result of South-South cooperation in helping to achieve the sustainable development goals, the different sustainable development goals. But of course, especially in the healthcare. I think the whole world, we have all learned lessons from the pandemic of COVID-19, where the importance of partnership, collaboration was the hallmark of the whole world. Because we have a world that is asymmetrical. We have people who are in the world without access to basic needs. And we have others who have over. For us to promote that dialogue between the South and the North, but also within the South-South cooperation. For instance, when Africa was like, there was no vaccine. India, China, they have donated a large amount of, I'm just giving you an example, a large amount of vaccine. But what we are looking for is not the donation, is to build the capacity so that Africa and other southern countries can also be able to stand the challenges of pandemics and other challenges. This is what we are looking for. Climate change. Before coming to that, the Gambia has taken significant steps in addressing women issues, including GBV, gender-based violence. And we have established access to essential services nationwide, especially for vulnerable population, without imposing financial hardships. Similarly, the government has taken steps to combat GBV, including offering temporary housing for survivors, and host both the National GBV and Child Protection Helplines and Gender Management Information System. The other big challenge that the southern countries are faced with is the issue of climate change. We all know we contribute negligible percentage to the global greenhouse gas. But when it comes to the impact of climate change, we suffer most because of our vulnerability. So therefore, recognizing the impact of climate change on national development, the Gambia continues to implement robust mitigation and adaptation measures, including comprehensive disaster risk financing, which I must also acknowledge and thank the UNOSSC office for supporting the Gambia through the India Fund, UN India Fund, to support the National Disaster Management Agency of the Gambia to develop systems that will be able to monitor disasters around the country. We have our second nationally determined contribution, of which I am very proud. I was the minister responsible for environment and climate change, and we had an NDC, which is ambitious enough and compliant to 1.5 target. Also through the support of South-South cooperation through UNDP. So this is very important. And we also develop our long-term strategy, which is to operationalize the NDC. I know that because the questions that you posted are so loaded, and I just want to, so I want to talk about the IPSA fund, which have also enabled us to, in agriculture, to empower some women and youth in the rural areas. So I also want to acknowledge our partners. We have cultivated enduring partnership with countries like Cuba, Turkey, China, Morocco, Nigeria, India, and the Republic of Korea and Nigeria, who have supported in various fields in education, health, and agriculture. But the challenge now, I would terminate here. The challenge that we are faced with is access to resources and capacity and technology. For us, our fundamental priority is food security and poverty. And you cannot end poverty, you cannot end food security without access to technology. For instance, I would repeat my example. If we have AI, not the big AI elephant in the room, but artificial insemination, for instance, in agriculture, those low technologies, but with high impact on the lives and the livelihood of our people. We want to establish sustainable livelihood of our people, for our people, through access to technology that can enhance responsible food production and consumption pattern, green economy, and circular economy. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. I think you have injected the room with solutions, excitement, ideas, challenges that are incredibly appreciated. I'm going to now introduce Hajar Al Qusayr, who is the head of sustainability of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Ministry of Economic Planning. I mean, I've had the privilege and pleasure of seeing your work and seeing the commitment that you have to scalable, evidence-based approaches for the Sustainable Development Goals, and how much I think genuine partnership and data and rigor you are putting behind that. Could you tell me a little bit about what your vision is and how you're intending to implement that, and really just, I think, open up our own, to your point, ambition, opportunity, and discussion?
Can I use yours? First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Ala, and thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your remarks. I'll take a step back a little bit, and I want to just open this session a little bit, because it's one of the things that we're doing in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in the Ministry of Economy and Planning, with the collaboration of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other ministries, to not only cement the thinking of the sustainable development as a mindset for us, but also as a way to collaborate and connect with other countries. So, Excellencies, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, it's a true pleasure to be here with you. And I want to give a special thank to the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation. I was just with Dima, and I was just stating how much their collaboration, their knowledge, what just His Excellency mentioned, is something that we really acknowledge. And it's and they are pivotal, let's say, partners in accelerating sustainable development, not only globally, but also they ensure that knowledge solutions flow across borders. And for that, we're really thankful. Ladies and gentlemen, we gather today at a time when nearly 1 in 10 people still live in extreme poverty, and when global debt services has reached $1.4 trillion. And actually, when Gaza reminds us every day that sustainable development cannot be achieved, where people live under not only occupation, but also instability. These are not abstract statistics. They are human realities. They are reminders that development, not just about numbers, it's about dignity, it's about justice. And our presence here today, all of us, show that we all recognize the scale of challenges. We recognize that there are rising inequalities, increasing pressure on environment, urgent need to restore trust and actually cooperation. And we know one truth that I just say to Dima when we have this conversation, that there is not a single country can face these challenges alone. But also, we believe today is a moment of opportunity. It is a chance for us to come together, to reflect, to exchange experiences, and most importantly, to chart practical pathways that can deliver results where they are most urgently needed. And maybe this is what we worked on together, Dr. Ala, when we talk about Saudi. But I want to bring a little bit of positivity here. The past 2 decades prove that we can achieve when the world mobilizes together. We achieved already a child and maternal mortality, which I'm sure you know that the rates have fallen dramatically. Over also 1 million more children are in school today than a decade ago, actually. And also the social protection reaches more than half of the world in 2023. That compared to, I think, 42% back in 2015. And actually 92% of humanity had access to electricity in 2023 as well. These are maybe powerful examples and reminders that progress is possible, that when knowledge, finance, innovation as well unite, real changes happen. Maybe the purpose of this event is to spotlight solutions and collaborative models that, as His Excellency said, impact-focused, scalable, and evidence-based. If we align our efforts around these principles, we can, for sure, inshallah, make the collective actions to deliver real results. And this is why your insights matter. And that's why, Dr. Ala, I want to really hear from our guests here more than I talk about what we have been doing, because the perspectives from different sectors, different countries, different experiences is what and the Ministry and South-South cooperation as well thriving to hear. And I believe this diversity will bring this innovation together. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation with our guests more than that. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Diman Khatib, who's the Director of the Office of South Cooperation, next for her remarks.
Thank you very much, Ala, and thank you very much, Hajar, for this introduction. And then, good morning, everyone, Excellency and Excellencies and everybody around the room. It's a real pleasure to welcome you here at the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation for such a stimulating discussion on the acceleration of progress, the acceleration of SDGs and the solutions, and to also underscore the importance of South-South and Triangle cooperation. Let me first start by thanking the Ministry of Economy and Planning. This has been a real pleasure to co-organize this with you. The efforts of your team, but also the effort of the team at UN Office for South-South Cooperation behind the scenes, right? Tamin, Sham, many people here around the room who have been really putting a lot of effort into. Let me also take this opportunity just Today also happens to be the Saudi Arabia National Day, so it's an opportunity also for us to congratulate Saudi Arabia for that day. It's also a moment of reflection for all the efforts that the country has been putting in supporting the countries of the South. Also, I want to acknowledge the presence with us of APC Colombia. They are our vice presidents for the high-level committee on South-South cooperation. They've been extremely active. A week ago, more than a week ago, they have hosted many regional events in Latin America, but also celebrating the UN Day for South-South cooperation. So thank you for being with us, also for sharing the experiences. I'm very happy to have you with us here. Hajar has highlighted many important facts about what's happening in the world today. And how the globe is also lagging behind in terms of achieving the SDGs according to the SDG report that has been issued recently, with only 35% of the SDGs on target. And His Excellency also showcased for us very forcefully a very good case about Gambia and the challenges there. And we're also very happy that with our managed trust funds, we have been able to mend some of those deep needs for Gambia, and a good showcase for also other countries. Today's discussion, I mean, of course, our collective effort would be needed. There's no other way but moving in terms of collaborative work and partnerships. Not only because there is a need to do that in terms of the financial resources, we all know that the ODA has been declining drastically, but also because most of the development issues are transboundary also, right? Whether it's climate, whether it's environment, whether it's water, whether it's peace and development. So South-South cooperation and Triangle cooperation really need to be central to the development cooperation board that is moving forward. Today's discussion is also anchored in 3 principles that will help us, move forward. First, to be more impact focused, right? Directing resources to impactful priorities with measurable results. Second, to ensure scalability so that solutions are scaled up and take root across diverse country contexts. And third is strengthening data collection and evidence-driven actions while promoting peer-to-peer learning and also transparency around that. And these principles, they do align with the renewed multilateral system momentum, right? Which has been reflected in recent global outcomes, from the Pact of the Future to the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development to the Doha Program of Action, the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SIDS, the new Program of Action for Landlocked Developing Countries. We need to make sense out of all of this. And we're also very, very pleased that also with the support of the member states and the high-level committee, South-South and Triangle cooperation is anchored in all of these agenda. And we are, as we move forward in the process of thinking with our new strategic framework, how can we converge our efforts to support these agendas and their implementation through action-oriented activities, but also through widened partnerships and collaborations, whether at the global, but also regional and countries level. And this is extremely important because the multilateral system is present in every country of the South. So that is definitely a main impartial and capable vehicle to support that process. And we need to be and stand behind it in terms of that partnership. So here we are reaffirming our commitment, but also thinking with you on establishing new avenues for partnership and also making sure that there is follow-up, there is focus on innovation, there is focus on data-driven approaches, and there is focus also on making sure that there is interregional collaboration, inter-country collaboration. The scalability is important. You gave very good examples on the trust fund support to your country. That's very important. What's important is also to take it to the next level. How is Gambia scaling this up across the country? And what does it take to do that? That is the important part, right? Thank you very much. And I look very much to continuing the discussion. And thank you, Ella.
Thank you so much. So Hajar and Dima, what I'm hearing from you is really a recognition on the importance of impact-focused, collaborative, evidence-based, action-oriented, and really partnerships anchored and oriented. And so I'm very excited because our first interjection was really illustrating some of those examples from His Excellency. I'm now going to turn it over to Nepal, which is a landlocked country. It is a country that brings forward such a critically important perspective. It's shaped by its geography, its connectivity, its challenges and ambitions. We have the pleasure of having Ms. Shivani Basnet, counselor at the Permanent Mission of Nepal to the UN, joining us today. Thank you for being here. Ms. Basnet, Nepal has made commendable progress in social indicators and resilience despite structural constraints. Could you highlight which SDGs have seen the strongest gains and what policies or partnerships have really driven those achievements?
So, yes, thank you, everyone. I wish to begin by thanking the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation for convening this timely event. So yes, as you rightly pointed, we are a landlocked LDC, but despite that, we have made commendable progress despite our actual constraints. We've achieved significant advances in social indicators, reducing multidimensional poverty from 30.1% to 17.4% within 5 years, expanding electricity access to 94% of households, and drastically lowering our maternal and child mortality. Around 42% of our population is youth, and they're extremely motivated, sharp, and driving the country forward. And I can tell you that with confidence. We've embedded the SDGs into our national, provincial, and local development plans. Nepal's national overall SDG progress, we stand at 41%. We've also made these notable strides in poverty reduction, food security, healthcare, education, gender equality, clean water, sanitation, sustainable cities, and environmental protection. Maternal mortality dropped to 151 per 100,000 live births from in 2022, from 258 in 2015. And women hold around 33% of seats in our parliament. Yet we have these challenges. I'm sorry, I'm answering all your questions. In my, it's getting interesting. I was quite happy to hear from the distinguished speakers before. So I just wanted to add some more points on that. We have challenges like, the pandemic pushed us back 4% of our population back into poverty. Institutional capacity gaps persist. Economic transformation is definitely slow and infrastructure remains inadequate. And yes, the climate vulnerability continues to threaten our rural livelihoods, and implementation gaps include weak coordination and fragmented monitoring systems. So how I see now the South-South, and the cooperation playing a role here, some ideas that I would like to share is like, what we can offer, how we can combine solutions within the region to sort of build a synergy of comparative advantage. We have our own, strengths and weaknesses as nations. So how we can build on that together. Collaborations, the Global South partners, especially in the renewable energy investments, climate smart agriculture, digital solutions, including like digital public infrastructure, that they offer scalable, context appropriate solutions. When we hear about climate change, there is a kind of a mindset like, oh, there's vulnerability, or there is the 1.5 degrees target we need to meet. But I think well, let's look at it from the other side, and that's what our NDC is trying to show. We just presented we're one among the first 25 countries to submit our NDCs, and it's trying to say, hey, okay, there is climate change, there is crisis, but we can, benefit, and we can make a transition that can be economically viable. For instance, the rich clean energy resources in the South, they have solutions, not only to bring down emissions, but also can be good for business. Clean energy is getting cheaper. 95%. 73% of our vehicles that are running in Nepal now are electric, and we're trying to bring that to 95%. That was highlighted on New York Times as well. So how are we benefiting from that? Our petrol cost is coming down. We don't have to rely on fuel. We don't have to, because or else we have to import a lot of fuel from our friendly neighboring countries. So our trade deficit is going down. So how do we think from that angle? Like how can business look good with renewables? How can business profit with these clean energy options? So so just an idea that I thought of sharing. Likewise, we think of these the artificial intelligence we're talking about. The AI solutions for agriculture, education, health, we have to realize that in the global South, it's not only AI solutions, these are our social solutions, these are our service delivery solutions, and these are our economic solutions. So, it's bringing a lot of, aspects of our economy, our society. The AI solutions are offering, we can think on that line. Likewise, the recent AI report highlighted about the capacity building networks. So how can we bring capacity building networks within the region? We have a lot of capacity to build these capacity building networks. The other thing is, like I said, coming back to clean energy, we have a lot of clean energy in terms of hydro, solar, wind in the global South. So we are having the emerging technologies, the data centers, they need reliable sources of energy. And we can not only turn to these non-renewables, we need to look, they're going to be energy hungry. So how can we explore options of these reliable sources of energy, like clean energy for data centers. These could be one other areas that we could, think on a new line. Likewise, in Nepal, IT service exports is gaining momentum. So when we come to think of Nepal, okay, with the recent, situation, but we're moving in the right direction, and I can tell that to you with confidence and full confidence. So we have a lot of IT talents among the youth. They're very, very talented. And there are, our IT service exports is gaining momentum. So how, let's not only think, otherwise than thinking about the financing options, which are important, encouraging the youth within the region to promote, collaborate on these IT service exports. This first encourages job creation, second promotes cooperation, and third, it makes us an even stronger global south. Then these kind of South-South cooperation framework will not only help in supporting the economic growth, but also make South-South cooperation more reliant and independent cooperation framework within the web of this evolving international relationships. And yes, the most important thing I feel is, we should encourage a sense of intergenerational equity in every aspect. We have to be accountable towards our younger generation. And, there has to be like, okay, we cannot take this for granted. This is our time, but we don't have a minute to lose. We have to be accountable to our next generation, whether that's in climate or whether that's in economics or, any other areas. So and with the UNGA80, conversations happening, I think South-South cooperation can sort of, also encourage efficiency with more equity, because we need efficiency, but we need equities for the delivery. Yep. So this is all I wanted to say. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you so much. It's so interesting to hear you speak both about the opportunities and challenges almost as two sides of the same coin, and how Nepal is really embracing that and approaching that in such a unique and innovative way, with partnership. To Dima's point, the transboundary challenges really invite the need for that. So thank you for your comments. I now have the honor to invite Her Excellency Ambassador Aylin Sekizkok, Director General for International Economic Affairs, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Turkey. Turkey has established itself as a strong partner for developing countries, combining solidarity with technical and financial support. Now, I have several questions for you, but my gut is that you're going to answer them all in your statement. So I do hope that you touch base on really how you're engaging with partner countries, what you see as some of the global challenges, and where you really think we can overcome bottlenecks and advance sustainable development. Your Excellency.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the UN Office for South-South Cooperation as well as Saudi Arabia for hosting and co-organizing this very important event. We actually meet a very critical juncture, as many of the speakers have already mentioned, that the Sustainable Development Goals are on the horizon that we have to meet until 2030, and we have only 5 years left. And in many of the targets, we are making very moderate progress, and in many of them, we are actually falling behind. And Gaza is a very stark example that we are at the verge of the collapse of the global governance in upholding the principles of peace, justice, as well as human dignity. Well, there is a famous Italian philosopher, Antonio Gramsci, who once told that the old world is dying, a new world is yet to be born. Therefore, now is time for monsters, unfortunately. Anyway, the business as usual is no longer an available option for all of us, including at the development sector. And I believe it's time to reflect upon the development stories of each country and to draw lessons for our future as well as for the future of our fellow partners. And for as far as Turkey is concerned, I have actually drawn up 3 important points I would like to share with you from our own development experience. First, Turkey has benefited a lot from the UN system in its development efforts. As early as 1940s, 1950s, we have very firmly anchored actually ourselves with the development agencies of the UN. I mean, ILO, FAO, UNIDO, UNDP, you name it. And we benefited a lot in terms of the policy advice, in terms of technical capacity building assistance, and in terms of human capital development. So my first point is that UN system is essential and indispensable for our development efforts collectively. The second point I would like to make is that, and it's actually, I believe that where makes Turkey peculiar and actually distinguished. It is the fact that we have a very strong state system and strong state traditions. Therefore, it was easier for us to develop our institutional capacity at a faster pace. So my second point is that the state is important. The institutions are important in our development efforts. The third point, we have adopted very early years-long development plans and acted upon them. Actually, we have a very important institution in Turkey, which is called the State Planning Department, in existence in more than 70 years in Turkey. And the best bureaucrats of Turkey actually have been placed in that department. So the third point is planning is very important. So now Turkey has reached a level of development and we have become a place to inspire our wider region in their development efforts as well. And we started development assistance programs. And since the foundation of Turkey's Development Assistance and Cooperation Agency, TİKA, we have implemented more than 30,000 projects in more than 170 countries. This is a work in progress. And we are still learning how to share our expertise, how to share our experience with our fellow partners in development path. So a couple of things I would like to stress upon. Based on the principles that Dima mentioned, impact scalability and evidence-based approach. I believe, and I personally, I have the sense that we have been quite strong on the first principle, which is the impact. Because we have been targeting our interventions where they mattered most in order to create concrete and visible results. So in some regions, it matters a lot, actually, to open water wells. Or some other regions, it matters a lot to open hospitals or train nurses, or just to connect a few villages through roads in order to help them achieve sustainable results in their development. And I personally believe that this is the main factor in the success of Turkey's own development assistance programs, in particular in Africa. We are there on the ground and we are working in close partnerships with the local authorities. We are actually hand in hand with them so that we can understand their needs and respond to them accordingly. When it comes to scalability, this principle has been incorporated into our own development cooperation streamline quite recently. Well, previously, TİKA has implemented so many projects across wider regions, but these projects were actually mainly isolated, and TİKA has implemented these projects unilaterally. But in time, with the accumulated knowledge of our own official development assistance programs, we have come to a point that we started to think about scalability. to copy some projects that were successful in one place to the other places. And there comes a very crucial again aspect of the UN system. While, we receive assistance from the UN development agencies, we realize the importance of the UN early in 1950s, 60s. And now we have realized the importance of the UN system in actually sharing our expertise with our fellow partners in development. And there comes your office, and there comes, again, UNDP and all other relevant UN agencies. And they have actually started to establish their own regional offices in Turkey, in Istanbul, in Ankara. And in partnership with them, we are now in a better position to scale up our interventions across the region. The third principle, evidence-based approach. This is also new for us. We are still learning. And we're learning that very important aspect of work, again, in cooperation with the UN expertise and assistance. We are hosting actually two very important UN entities in Turkey. One of them is the UN Technology Bank. UN Technology Bank for the least developed countries are actually doing what we need most at this time, which is the technology needs assessment. So they go to the LDCs, they made an assessment of their technology needs. So we have a proper, outview of what these countries are in need most, and then we actually try to get the support from the donor countries as well as our South-South cooperation systems and network for those kind of projects to be implemented. And the second important UN organ, which is based in Istanbul, is the UNDP, Istanbul Center for Private Sector in Development. They are directly into the private sector. They are advising them to incorporate the development assistance programs in various countries, and they are actually doing their work very successfully. So actually, this is all I would like to mention about today, and wish you all the best for our joint endeavors in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and you have made my role very easy because we are going to weave right into evidence-based and data and the importance of that because reliable, timely, and actionable data really is a cornerstone, and we've heard it from several people of sustainable development. Strong data systems allow governments to identify gaps, track results, and scale up what works in partnership with others in that broader ecosystem. And they're really indispensable for building trust and ensuring accountability. And we've heard that vein from so many speakers already. So I'm now going to turn to Mr. Daniel Rodriguez, Director of the Presidential Agency for International Cooperation of Colombia. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit about how you see data and evidence-based approaches strengthening the acceleration of the Sustainable Development Goals. How do you see them as really kind of assisting in identifying priority gaps, ensuring accountability? And then could you also share a little bit about Colombia's national experience in strengthening those ecosystems?
Thank you. As South-Southern Triangular Cooperation Director of the Presidential Cooperation Agency, the United
That was not on purpose. You need to put it up.
Okay, I want to thank you, the United Nations Office of South-South Cooperation and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for this event. And also I want to thank you, Director Dima, for the recognition of our work and for your participation in our South-South Cooperation Day commemoration in Armenia, Quindío. For us was a pleasure having you there. Nearly 10 years since their adoption, it is important to recognize the significance of the SDGs having their own indicator framework. This has required substantial effort from both custodian agencies and national statistical offices, firmly positioning data as an enabler of sustainable development. The Medellin Action Framework on Data for Sustainable Development emerging from the 5th United Nations World Data Forum reflects the understanding that in today's context, marked by rapid technological change, growing information needs, and diverse data sources, data is not the task of a single institution, but of a dynamic national system. The framework offers a streamlined, priority-oriented agenda that is inclusive, not north-south centered, and engage the entire data community, public agencies, private actors, academia, and civil society alike. Its fourth area and 12th priority emphasize national ownership, inclusivity, and innovation, and provide countries with tools to, first, identify priority gaps, disaggregate localized data, expose inequalities, and ensures no one is left behind. Second, scale successful solutions. Evidence-based innovation can be replicated and adapted across contexts through South-South cooperation, for example. And third, strength accountability. Open and transparent data fosters trust and empowers citizens to hold institutions accountable. For countries in the global south, robust data systems are more than technical assets. They are instruments of sovereignty and empowerment, enabling evidence-based policymaking, more effective engagement with development partners, and resilience to crises, as I mentioned in this morning, such as climate change, pandemics, as Ambassador mentioned, and economic shocks. EPC Colombia has built a long-standing and productive partnership with DANE, that is our National Statistical Offices, enabling continuous collaboration across projects and joint advocacy in areas such as measuring South-South cooperation, the Beyond GDP agenda, and citizen-generated data. Currently, from EPC, we are financing the South-South cooperation project named Make Inclusive Data the Norm, implemented by the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, GPSDD, in collaboration with the National Statistical Offices of Colombia, Ghana, and Kenya. By promoting disaggregate people-centered data, this initiative ensures marginalized groups are visibly in policymaking while brightening national systems with community-driven approach. This work highlights a simple but vital truth: partnerships matters.
Thank you so much. I think we are beginning to really hear some common themes and threads come out, not because we prompted them, but really because they've actually been the experience of so many countries, really looking at scalability, being really evidence-oriented, and in every single one of the interventions we've heard so far, really anchoring around partnerships. So thank you for that intervention. To bring it home to partnerships, I'm going to go to the Chief Economist of the UNDP, George Gray. I would love to hear, UNDP has worked with so many, we've heard it come up in so many interventions as a critical partner, a critical lever. What do you see as the most pressing barriers preventing faster progress? And what risks are most urgent to avoid further regression, which is something we've been seeing in the years since the pandemic? I turn the floor to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair. It's wonderful to be here. I just wanted to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the UN Office for South-South Cooperation. Welcome, everyone, to UNDP. It's great to be your host. I think I'll go straight into the question because I think this is a propitious moment. As you said at the very beginning, Chair, that's 10 years since the beginning of this agenda. And we have learnings and lessons, both from gap by gap and very local analysis, as well as very aggregate and global. So let me go straight to some of the interesting things that are coming out from the gap by gap analysis, for example, are showing that the arenas in which we're seeing most progress are the slow cumulative things: education, social protection, electrification, issues that have long pipelines that take 10, 15 years and that are related to what the distinguished ambassador mentioned, planning, state capabilities, institutions, the capacity to do things over 5, 10, or 15 years. So one of the most important things that we're seeing is that slow cumulative effect. We know there's many reversals. We know there's many cyclical issues that we're going through, but that slow cumulative progress is sort of one of the key things that we're seeing on the gap by gap. When we zoom out and look at the global across country analysis, we look at the quality of the growth that creates jobs and infrastructure. And of course, there's sort of two models in theory, but there's only one in practice. In theory, there's the model of get the growth you can get and then sort of adjust ex post on social environmental sides. The other model is do structural transformation, think long, 20, 30 years, 50 years into the future, and try to create that inclusive, sustainable growth pattern that you want. In practice, most countries are doing both, and they're trying to address the growth that they need because we're in a cyclical moment in which a lot of things are pressing. I'll get to that in a minute. But that horizon for long-term thinking, which goes beyond even planning, it has to do with our capacity as societies to envision the future. That's the second thing that I wanted to mention on this big sort of zoom out. Now, if there was a headline to these 10 years, is that SDG achievement is proportional to country capacities and capabilities to move forward. It's not so much about the transitions from one GDP category to the next, because all of us have grown up with the transition of low income to middle income to high income economies, but that's probably missing the point of what's most important, which is the capacities and the capabilities of individual societies and countries themselves to transform themselves. So we think that that's sort of the headline of the 10 years. One of the best examples of this is multidimensional poverty and how it's progressed and changed across countries, because it does not move gap by gap. It happens territory by territory. It's bundles of services of education, health, nutrition, electrification, housing, all of these bundles through territories. And we have so many interesting examples of that. MPI progress is one of the few that runs relatively independent from economic growth. So even if your economy is not growing at a very high rate, you can see tremendous progress on multidimensional poverty. The region where I'm from, Latin America, saw a 20% drop in multidimensional poverty since 2008, despite going through sort of 2%, 3%, 4% growth in a period of a lot of crisis and volatility. So we see a lot of that driven by demographic shifts, migration, urbanization. We know that MPI is correlated to local government planning, financing, and institutional state capabilities. So coming back to that planning thing, I know a lot of us sometimes are scared of planning. We think about the 1970s, 80s, and very centralized and so on. But we're seeing tremendous foresight, AI, digital revolutions. It's a transformation of development planning out there, 2.0 or 3.0, and UNDP is in the middle of that. So we're learning from you, and we're trying to create learnings for everyone as we move forward. One final thing on the MPI, because this is already circulating and it's out there, is that there's many countries that demand higher thresholds of achievement beyond sort of the multidimensional poverty. So we're talking about resilience and vulnerability. We're talking about multidimensional well-being in terms of today, but also future generations. So we have a very fascinating, important agenda. In UNDP, we call that the family of human development indicators, because that family is multidimensional and it speaks of well-being today and in the future. Just to end on the SDG agenda, we know that SDGs are correlated to growth, not just any growth, but it's important to also realize in this moment that growth in the developed emerging worlds is keeping global growth alive. It's about 2/3 of global growth. 50 countries growing at more than 4% this year, 80 countries growing at 2 to 4%. Again, it's more about the quality of growth, but that's correlated to infrastructure and jobs. I'll stop here.
That was excellent. I don't think we often hear the combination. Oh, maybe turn the other one on. That was just in case anyone was sleeping. We want to make sure that everyone's up and listening. No, but I very rarely hear the combination of kind of planning, imagination, and curiosity. And I think that's a really interesting way to talk about both where the SDGs come from, a notion of, okay, we believe that there is state capacity to plan, and we also imagine and envision a future that is better than what we have today and that we can actually deliver on. And so to see those as kind of the core tenets of the way you're approaching this work is very exciting. It just is for the room, we have about 30 more minutes. And what I'd really like to do, we have 2 more speakers, and then I do want to open it up to the floor and just really hear other people's perspectives. So please start preparing your questions, comments. I'm going to ask you to be brief, but I'm really excited for us to have a dynamic conversation. I'm going to turn next to the importance of really incorporating and institutionalizing sustainable development within national ecosystems. And we have Your Excellency, Ms. Dana Hamza, Assistant Undersecretary for Sustainable Development of the Kingdom of Bahrain. I would love for you to walk us through how you've established dedicated institutional structures. We've now heard from so many speakers that state capacity to plan and organize and finance sustainable development is so critical. And what lessons can we draw from that? And something that I think has been implied by other speakers has been the prioritization of the SDGs to really deliver on some of those kind of patient, slow capital and planning outcomes. I'd love to hear about how you've been able to prioritize those.
Thank you, Anna, and many thanks to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Ministry of Economy and Planning and the Kingdom for kindly inviting me to be here with you all today, and also to the UN Office for South-South Cooperation as well. I'm very happy to be amongst a very diverse group of countries and leaders in the field of sustainable development today, and to share the Kingdom of Bahrain's experience. So I'll maybe start with just giving you a little bit of a brief on the role of the Ministry of Sustainable Development in Bahrain, especially given that we're almost 3 years now into since the establishment of the ministry. So the Ministry of Sustainable Development is actually maybe one of the very first or very unique ministries that are dedicated for sustainable development in the region and in the world, or one of the very few. And we were created at a time when the entire world was coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, where the world was suffering from all of the negative impacts of what the COVID-19 pandemic had to bring, whether on the social or the economic aspect. So it was a very strong message that was given to the rest of the world that Bahrain is very committed and dedicated to sustainable development. But our story doesn't start there. One of the key or one of the first activities that we did as a ministry was do the alignment and see how our national plans and strategies are aligned with the sustainable development principles and goals. And we saw that sustainability is actually very deep rooted in each one of our national plans and strategies, starting with our constitution and national charter, and all the way to many of the national plans and strategies that the Kingdom of Bahrain has been pursuing. So sustainability is actually it's a forward way of living, of thinking. It's not limited to the SDGs or any particular targets or goals. And this is what we've been trying to also raise the awareness of, because our role as a ministry is dedicated to coordinating efforts across multiple national stakeholders in Bahrain, but to also promote Bahrain's sustainability efforts to the rest of the world, which is why we feel like partnerships really embody that very, very well, because we need to learn best from what other jurisdictions and what other countries are doing. We're trying to look into what the international standards are when it comes to sustainable development and see how we could also adopt them here in Bahrain. And from learning from other jurisdictions, we try to see what other countries are doing best and try to forge strategic partnerships and opportunities that we could bring back to Bahrain. So when it comes to the Ministry of Sustainable Development, our role isn't really to to overlook or to overstep on any of the other ministries that are already meant to cover certain aspects or umbrellas that fall under sustainable development, but it's really to become the catalysts and the accelerators. And in doing so, to answer your question, Ala, about the prioritization and some of the lessons learned, one of the key areas that we found at the very first start of the establishment of the ministry was data and the need to strengthen data, because in order for us to promote Bahrain sustainability efforts and in order for us to come up with sustainability labels for Bahrain, we needed to make sure that whatever it is that we're saying is backed by data. In doing so, one of the first plans we put in place was to strengthen data and data systems by ensuring that we're not only ticking boxes to see who's meant to report what and meant to calculate what, but to really think about the innovative ways on how we could extract data in a better, more efficient way, and to also come up with unique indicators and unique indices for Bahrain that could really help translate how well developed Bahrain is and how very well developed the infrastructure is, and to translate that into data. So today, what we're trying to do is explain to the stakeholders in Bahrain that 2030 is right around the corner, and we can't still be contemplating whose responsibility it is to fill up data gaps. So in order for us to do that, we've been working with many of the UN entities as key partners. We've been delivering SDG by SDG workshop. We've been doing deep dives into specific indicators that could help us achieve more transformative progress, including expenditure on research and development, seeing how we could measure innovation, measure the impact of climate and the environment on health. So we've been doing all of that with key stakeholders. And today, 3 years into the making, we've been able to gain the trust of other entities in Bahrain, where today they actually come to us and say, can you please help us in figuring out what's the best way of capturing certain indicators, but also on how we could help promote Bahrain. So we're looking at things like innovation in the health sector, innovation in the financial sector. We're looking at the catalysts like financial inclusion, financial health, big data, artificial intelligence, and technology adoption. And we're trying to see how we could really adopt them in the best way possible and in the right sectors. And finally, I'll just like to add that when it comes to prioritization, we give all of the indicators and all of the SDGs equal importance. So we don't have any that we are in favor of or that we feel are more important than any other, but instead, what we're trying to do is making sure that we really use sustainable development in general as a way of creating a transformative progress. So we usually say that how can we build transformative action to achieve sustainable development? But sustainable development in itself is that powerful engine that could help us really achieve inclusive growth and fair and inclusive access to resources. And that's actually embodied in our economic recovery plan strategies that are focused on certain sectors that we would like to focus on as a country to help achieve better and more inclusive economic and sustainable development. I'll stop there.
Thank you. And your comment about sustainable growth really being a mindset, that engine, really takes me back to what Haj said earlier about that the aim is really to make it change people's perception of what is possible through this. Your intervention reminded me of two very famous, you've probably heard them at UNGA before, but I would say the first is information is power in terms of people coming to you then and the second is that you cannot change what you can't measure. And I think the work that you're doing is so indicative of how you're really bringing those threads together. We're going to now turn to Saudi Arabia on their perspective on a more prioritized approach to maximizing impact. Mr. Abdurrahman Al-Zamil, you are the General Manager for Sustainability Enablement at the Ministry of Economy and Planning. I would love to hear from you. Do you believe that prioritization and a more focused approach are essential for shaping effective sustainable development strategies? And how is Saudi Arabia doing that? How are they creating that more focused and impact-driven approach?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ala, and thanks also to the UN Office for South-South Cooperation for your kind partnership and your kind support in making today's discussion a reality. And it is such a pleasure to be in this panel with such rich panelists with different perspectives that we have learned from today a lot. I don't want to repeat maybe a lot of the very, very important points that you have mentioned today that we are taking into consideration to take this step forward. But we all know that SDGs have the formation of SDGs since 2015 have helped accelerate sustainable development efforts globally. It established a very clear pathway through the 17 SDGs and the targets that were that countries used to guide their development and national efforts. And it also facilitated global cooperation that is funneled towards sustainable development, as well as it raised a lot of awareness and global commitment towards the areas that have been identified. And it promoted inclusive development. Yet we see that there are significant efforts that have been done in that front, but there remains uneven progress towards sustainable development. We see that 83% of targets display insufficient progress for achievement by 2030. And out of those, 35% are indicating stagnation or regression below the 2015 baseline levels. We believe that this is primarily due to tackling too many global issues at once. And this is also coupled with challenges that in measuring progress accurately and the lack of clear prioritization that is resulting in resources being allocated to less impactful and nationally relevant goals. Giving equal emphasis to SDGs, we will be unable to sufficiently distinguish between areas of the highest national relevance and those with the less immediate impact. And as a result of this, the resources, such as financial resources, human resources, and institutional resources, are spread too thin across too many of the initiatives that we tackle today. So in a nutshell, prioritization is essential. And with the limited resources that we have in today's world, countries must focus on the areas of the highest national relevance and the greatest potential impact. And this will ensure that our interventions are both efficient and transformative. And this does not only apply to individual countries' context, but also at a global level. Just as countries can choose to align their resources with the most critical national priorities, international cooperation should concentrate on the highest areas of impact. And this will enable stakeholders to contribute where they have the strongest expertise and proven successes. And in that way, we can transform ambition into results, both on a national level and on a global level. And maybe very quickly on your point on what is Saudi Arabia doing nationally in that regard to prioritization. In Saudi Arabia, in Vision 2030 and the national programs or the supporting national programs in relation to this has served us as a powerful catalyst to drive sustainable development, which resulted or making the kingdom one of the fastest improving G20 countries in sustainable development performance between the years 2015 and 2024. And this is according to the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. We believe that there is still room for improvement, of course, and we recognize that the importance of adopting a more prioritized and laser-focused approach to maximize impact. And we are taking deliberate steps in this direction nationally, and we have activated efforts to develop our National Sustainable Development Blueprint, which defines Saudi Arabia's sustainable development priorities with the aim of accelerating progress in areas that are most relevant to local context and where we believe we can drive the greatest impact. We have defined a focused set of national sustainability missions, clear priorities, areas that align with existing national objectives, as well as emerging needs that Saudi Arabia needs to look into. And these missions captured ongoing efforts on sustainable development in the kingdom, while also addressing critical gaps as well. Maybe to close with a few remarks in this regard, we believe that it is very important to emphasize that the development of a prioritized set of nationally relevant focus areas does not reduce the kingdom's commitment to the broader scope of the SDGs. Our efforts across the comprehensive sustainability agenda will continue to move forward and remain a priority. The differentiated focus we are applying simply reflects our ambition to accelerate progress in those areas where we believe the kingdom can achieve the greatest impact in the near term, and while also continuing to maintain progress across the full sustainable development agenda. So several topics, several topical areas already reflect the benefits of this prioritization in our exercise. So for example, in the field of water management, we have been developing innovative solutions to address scarcity challenges by adopting technologies and practices that are tailored to the kingdom's local context, aligned with global benchmarks and scalable toward areas that drive the greatest impact. The establishment of the Water Global Organization also showcases the kingdom's commitment to address persistent challenges beyond its borders, of course, by driving innovation and global collaboration. And basically, this focused approach of where I want to allude to will form the basis of our efforts going forward and ensure that the kingdom's sustainable development journey delivers maximum impact, both on a national level and on a global level as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And I really appreciate the emphasis on both delivering on the urgent, but also keeping line of sight and focusing on the important at the same time and not making those trade-offs. To your point about long-term planning and really being able to say, this is what we are both capable of, but this is what we're offering partners and in cooperation as well. We have about 10-15 minutes, if we really stretch it, for us to be able to have a dialogue and a conversation. And my real question, just hearing a lot of the interventions, is does the concept of prioritizing across sustainable development focus areas with the highest potential either for your country or organization, et cetera, for impact resonate with you? And I'd also love, I really do welcome to the floor, any other comments that the interventions have really brought to mind, something that you feel like, okay, wait, we're, that aligns with something we've also experienced, or this is a challenge or an opportunity that we are underestimating or underemphasizing. And Hajed, because you kicked us off and really gave us kind of direction on scalable, evidence-based, action-oriented, I'm going to go to you first. For anyone who is interested in speaking, please keep it under a minute, minute and a half. And please feel free to, we don't have placards for everyone, so feel free to raise your hand and we'll make sure a mic gets to you.
Thank you, Dr. Ala. Honestly, I'm reflecting on all the points that were raised here. It's amazing and great, and I can actually relate to each one of you. Like starting from Turkey, for example, the governance, the institutional setup is very important in order for us to actually accelerate sustainable development. Actually, we can pick whatever we want from priorities, but if we don't have the enablers, if we don't have this institutional setup, willingness, and let's say capabilities that will push it forward, it will still be frameworks. It will be on papers and just aspiration, and we just carry this to the next generation. I think focusing on the enablers was was very important here. Name it, the data, the innovation, the private sector. His Excellency mentioned the private sector here and the empowerment of the private sector. When it comes to Saudi, as Abdulrahman said, we have the Vision 2030 that set up a lot of our aspiration and priorities. And if we compare between the SDGs and the vision, we have more than, I think, 83% actually. That's, I'm not going to say overlap, but similarities. And all of these things, when we talk about it, we think about who are our partners. So partnership is very important. Is the data setup very important for? So actually, let's say not only in the leadership and in the government, in our discussions, we're always, I see or I hear is that we are over advised but under informed, because we don't have the right setup of data that we can rely on. The other thing is innovation, science, and technology. I have noticed a lot of comments here saying the access to technology is actually a challenge. I'm gonna bring an example. It's not in Saudi, but because we kicked this off in the kingdom, and it was championed by the Ministry of Economy and Planning, is that we don't like to, let's say this is a challenge, but how can we bring a solution? So there is a partnership between us and the World Economic Forum when it comes to pushing science, technology, and innovation. We have worked on some of the challenges when it comes to food, let's say food systems, carbon capture utilization, as just an example on how to solve these problems. There were more than hundreds and hundreds of innovators who submit their, let's say, ideas and bring them to reality. For the carbon capture, we have more than 20, I think, Abdulrahman, right? Let's say innovators who actually visited Saudi, saw the fields and spoke to the biggest, let's say, companies to how to actually solve these kind of problems. So we pay this kind of attention to enablers more than just ideas, more than just themes and goals.
That is incredibly helpful. I like the way you've connected that to kind of building ecosystems for impact, right? The innovators, the political will and engagement, the data, that enablement piece, I think, is where so many. Please raise your hand if you would like to speak. I believe we have, and please say your name and your affiliation when you take.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Mohammed Zarqani, I'm the UN Resident Coordinator in Saudi Arabia. First of all, it's wonderful to hear all of you speak. And it's wonderful to see all the common challenges, but also the common opportunities that arise for everyone here today. I love hearing about the data part. Because obviously it's front and center in much of the work that we do together at the country level. But what I want to add as well is that it doesn't only guide you from within in terms of your own analysis. What we've been doing with our colleagues and friends in the Ministry of Economy and Planning as well, so we're doing something called the nearest neighbor analysis, with the sense of, looking like 5 years ago, where was Saudi Arabia in terms of a particular SDG? And then we compare it to 5 other countries that were at that same very spot at that same time. And then we see the 5 top countries that have actually improved in this particular SDG. And we see the 5 that have done the worst in that. So basically, we go to 5, and this is where you can bring in also the South-South triangle cooperation part to it. Is that you work with the 5 countries who have done so well, that were with you at the same time. You see which kind of policies they followed and so on. Particularly looking at things that, I mean, Abdulrahman, you mentioned like cost-benefit analysis as one of the angles to look to, but also behavioral science, nudges, all of those things that can give you, big wins at a very low cost are very key. But rather than innovating from scratch, there are models, again, based on data, where you actually look and make progress there. So that's an example I just wanted to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think there is one of the benefits of conversations like this is you get to hear live examples of what is being done, what people are learning, what people are being successful in implementing. And so really welcome some of those live examples and live collaborations. Do we have anyone else who would like to take the floor before I close the session? Sure. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you very much. Zanofa Ismail. I'm from the UN Office for South-South Cooperation. Just wanted to mention that when you talk about institutionalization of South-South or East-East in some contexts or triangle cooperation, what is key is the inclusivity of that arrangement. And I think the Turkey is one of the best examples of that. I mean, having lived and worked in Turkey for the office, because Turkey, apart from the political will from the highest level, it also has an ecosystem that not only includes the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and TICA and Red Cross but also civil society institutions, right? And they also have academic institutions also that are quite active in terms of promoting South-South and triangular cooperation. It actually goes beyond development. They also focus on humanitarian and other pillars of the UN Charter, because that's one of the thing when you talk about institutionalization and SDGs implementation. It's also important that we try and underpin all the pillars of the UN Charter, right? So therefore, I think Turkey is one of the examples. I just want to echo that based on our experience. Thank you.
I think thank you for that, for really kind of for really speaking to the experience that you've had. And I think it is an excellent way for us to actually come to the close of this session, which is that really strong leadership, leadership anchored not only in sustainable development, but in partnership, to your point, in inclusivity, to your point, in recognizing both the challenges of the day, humanitarian needs, food security, water security, is also married to political will and partnership and leadership, not just across South-South, but globally. And to have countries really leading that is exciting. Sorry, I see one more hand. You got in right under the time cutoff. Go right ahead.
Good morning. Thank you so much for organizing this. My name is Marcel Garcia from the Permanent Mission of Brazil. I have instructions just to share some quick notes. Microphone works. I need to be okay. All right, I'll be quick. I know we're a little bit running out of time. Just to highlight a few points that were already echoed here, which we appreciate. And I thank the organizers for this very thoughtful event, very timely. So for Brazil, we just like to highlight some core principles that should be in the foundation of our work, which are global solidarity, right to develop it, and knowledge exchange. All these principles should be taken into account, depart from national priorities of receiving countries, especially from the global south. Brazil has a lot of experience on different models of cooperation, South-South cooperation, triangular cooperation, and we are very much open to share, to have this exchange that were already mentioned here, especially through the Brazilian Cooperation Agency. And especially on trilateral cooperation, we feel this is one of the ways to deal with the scarcity of resources that we're facing. So that's something that we can work together on how to deep and look for new avenues in this sense. And also to voice a support here for the importance of having data and measurement to have projects that are evidence-based for policies and coordination, and our support of UNCTAD on this sense. Thank you so much.
And thank you. It's been, we're working with Brazil now as they're preparing for COP, and to see those tenets and those pillars be such a critical way in which Brazil has been engaging has been really exciting and enriching, I think, for the conversation and the negotiations and the long-term impact. So that leadership definitely comes through. I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. UNGA has a lot of competing meetings, and the fact that we have all been here together having this conversation, really rich interventions that I think were, I think the thing I take away most from this meeting is the humility. Almost every single speaker said, and we're learning. We're trying, we're doing, but we're learning. And I think that humility is something that will really propel us into actually implementing and realizing the SDGs for our communities, because there is no right way. There's excellent enablers. There's a focus, yes, on data and information and coordination and on political planning and will. But really every country in partnership, in learning, in collaboration with others is really accountable for the Sustainable Development Goals. And to see that ownership is critically exciting. Please feel free, for those that are not going to run off to their next meeting, please feel free to continue the conversation in the room. And thank you again so much for being with us.
Good reference to my library.
Nice to meet you. Ila from the Saudi Arabian mission.
Not so big.
I heard a lot about you. All good things, of course. All good things, of course. I'm sure. Always running around like a crazy person. Yeah.
Maybe leave expected.
Likewise, yes. No, thank you so much for, helping us organize all of this, helping ministry. Very good meeting, honestly. Very nice sessions. I love the conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Pleasure to meet you. And I'll see you around when I'm running again. انت اول سنه اشوفك اي والله نقول لهم
So it's always no.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. ترى بس قطعت هذه عشان زبيدة.